His hands were folded in his lap, and his chin was resting on his chest. His eyes were closed. I had closed them. A wisp of hair dangled over his forehead and down past his nose. The dog whined again, and I looked down at him. His brown eyes looked up at my face. What he saw was a private detective named Toby Peters, who was closer to 50 than 45, had more than a few gray hairs in his sideburns, sweated too easily, and lived with an always sore back and memories bought with hard time. Standing up, which I seemed to be doing less and less, I was close to 5'9". My face was dark and most notable for the piece of flesh in its center, which could only charitably be called a nose. God began to remold my nose when I was about 13. God used my older brother Phil as his instrument, and my brother used a baseball. Later, God, without too much creativity, remolded the nose some more with an automobile windshield. Still not content, he let my brother put the final touches to the job with his fist. That God sculpture explanation isn't mine. It was given to me a few years back by my landlord at the Faraday, Jeremy Butler, ex-pro wrestler, present poet. I didn't see the work of God in my nose when I looked in the mirror or at my reflection in a store window on Main Street. I saw a tough-looking, surprisingly amused man who needed a new suit and a shave. "Dog," I said aloud, "why am I happy?" The dog whined again, but it wasn't heightened animal awareness. I was now sure he needed a walk. I looked around and decided that he couldn't relieve himself anywhere in my office. I could let him out into Shelley's office and pretend I didn't know what he was doing. Given the recently scrubbed state of Shelley's lair, even Shelley might notice. "Dog," I whispered, patting his head, "you'll just have to hold it. Think about something else." The dog had no intention of thinking of something else. He stood up again on his stumpy legs and looked toward the window and downtown Los Angeles. There was an alley out there, but it was 4 stories down. The elevator ground past the 2nd floor, and the corpse slumped a little further in his chair, probably from the vibrations of the approaching elevator. Maybe it was a warning. Whatever it was, it scared the dog, which stood up on the desk and proved that he couldn't think about something else. I jumped up and back, but my office is just big enough for my desk, my chair, and one other chair jammed behind the door. There was no place to escape but out the window. His leg was up, and he was aiming at the telephone. "No," I said calmly. "Don't. Wait. For Christ's sake, is a little bladder retention too much to ask after all I've done for you?" I didn't expect him to understand me. At least not the words. When I was a kid, I had had a dog named Murphy. I used to talk to Murphy a lot, and he always pretended that he understood, which is what dogs learn to do early when they discover that they're really too stupid to understand. Sometimes you can fool a dog that way. The dog in my office was smarter than the average dog. He put his paw down and whined. I reached over to the desk and into the bag of Fritos I'd picked up earlier at Safeway and offered a handful to the dog. He sniffed at them, forgot his problem for a second, licked a Frito, took one in his mouth, and sat down to chew on it. I had lost track of time. Maybe it was the grinding of Fritos in dog teeth that had covered the sound, but I suddenly realized that the elevator had stopped. I tried to listen, but the dog had gone for the Frito bag and was pushing paper and grinding, his black nose turning Frito orange. The door to the outside office opened, and then the inner door. All that was left for the killer was to take 6 or 7 steps across the room and open my office door. Above the sounds of the distracted dog on my desk, I counted the steps and watched as the shadow fell across the pebbled glass of my door. A hand reached for the door, hesitated, and turned the knob. I reached for my gun on the desk, but it wasn't where I had just put it. The dog had probably kicked it to the floor, where it lay somewhere in darkness. The door began to open, and I had no time to come up with a plan that didn't include a gun in my hand. I sat back as the door pushed cautiously forward and did my best to look like a dangerous man who has aces full. I said, "We've been waiting for you. Sorry I can't offer you a chair, but the only one I've got is occupied by a corpse." The killer, whose gun I was trying not to look at, stepped in, and with a smile said, "Then both chairs..."